Now, next we're going to be working on the hourly section here for our weather component. Now, what that's going to look like is right here we have this hourly view, which you can scroll through to view up to, I believe, 23 or 24 hours of weather for that current city you're on. Now, what this is going to include is the time, the current condition, we're going to be using an icon, and then also the current temperature for that hour, or what it's supposed to be. All right, so let's head over to our project and get started here. So we want to create two new components for this. The first one's going to be called hourly weather. And then the second one's going to be called hourly temp. All right, and we forgot the dot view there. Let's go ahead and add that. So what we have two components for is because inside of the weather component here, we're actually going to nest our hourly weather. And then for each one of our hours here, this is going to be a separate component. Okay, so let's start off by actually generating the basic template here for these view components. And inside of this one, we'll give it a class of hourly weather. And then we'll give it a name. And we'll say hourly weather. And let's just change this to a style with the SCSS scoped. All right, and then for our hourly temp here, let's go ahead and generate that view structure as well. We'll give it a class of hour, and then we're just going to actually insert a paragraph tag here with the value of 8 p.m. And we'll get rid of that, but that's just for some testing purposes. Then we're going to go ahead and pass this a name, and we'll say hourly temp. And then for the style tag here, we want to change this to our SCSS scoped. All right, so let's head over to our weather component here and actually import the hourly weather. So I'm just going to copy this down, and we'll say hourly weather. And we'll change the direction here, or the file location, to hourly weather, and then we're going to actually insert this component. And then we need to actually insert it here inside of our markup. So we'll say hourly weather, and there we go. Now, for this component, we actually don't need all of this data. The only thing we're going to need is the forecast, which is down here. So we're going to bind it by saying :forecast and set that equal to forecast. All right. Then let's head over to our hourly weather and accept that as a prop. And we'll say forecast. All right, so to actually see what data we're going to be using, let's just start off by running a created lifecycle hook here. And then let's just say, we'll say console.log this.forecast. Okay, so if we head over to our application now, you should see that we have this logged out here, and we have all this information from our forecast. Now, the only thing we're going to be needing here is this hourly, which is an array that has 48 different arrays with the current conditions for each one of the hours. So you can see here we have a temp of 24, and then we're going to be pretty much only using the temp, and I believe inside of the weather here we have another array, and this is where we're going to get the current condition from using the icon, as we have already a few different times in this project. Okay, so let's go ahead and first, or continue here, we have to actually import our hourly temp component to actually use it inside of this component. So we're going to say import hourly temp, and we'll say hourly temp. Nope. Let's just copy this here. Oops. There we go. And I don't know why it's doing that. Okay. And then we also have to accept it as a component. So we don't have that yet in this file. So we'll say hourly weather, and there we go. So what are we going to do with this component? Well, what we want to do is actually we're going to run a v-for loop on the hourly array here, and we want to create a component for each one of our hours. So what we're going to do is we're going to say div with a class of container. Now inside of this container, we want another div with the class of hourly temp. Okay, and this is where we're actually going to insert that component. So if we just say hourly weather here. Oh, you know what? We actually imported the component right into the component itself. This needs to be hourly temp, not hourly weather. My mistake. Let's just go out here and do that. So let's see here, hourly temp and hourly temp. And there we go. It's like, it looks a little bit weird. All right, so now if we head over to our application, we should see we have the one return value of 8 p.m. Now, one thing we need to realize here is that we want to only display 23, or I should say 24 hours of data. This returns 48. So how can we alter this array to only give us the first 23 responses? Well, what we can do inside of Vue is actually run a computed property, which is going to alter data that we already have inside of our project here. So that is perfect for what we want to go ahead and do. So we're going to say compute it, and we're going to create a new function here called filtered list, and then we're going to open this up. Now inside of here we want to return this dot forecast dot hourly, and we're going to be using the slice method here. Now the slice method accepts two arguments. The first array you want to slice it at, so we want to say start at 0, and we want to slice this array all the way to the 23rd I guess response, or the 23rd result. There we go. That's better. All right, so that's all we have to do for this computed property. Now, instead of actually running a v-for loop on the hourly array here, we're going to run it on the filtered list. So how that's going to look is we're going to say v-for, and we want to say time, and we'll also want to pass an index value here. So we're going to say index, and we're going to say in filtered list. And then we also have to pass the key, which we're going to use the index as that value. Okay, so now if we save this, we should see we have 23 responses here, which is what we want. But clearly this is not formatted properly just yet, and we'll go ahead and get into that in just a second. Now, what we also want to do is pass the current, the hourly value here inside of the hourly temp component here. So we have to do a vbind here. So we're going to say time, and we want to set this equal to, let's see here, I did that wrong, and time. So if we head over to our hourly temp, what we want to do now is accept this as a prop, and we want to say prop, and we want to say time. Okay, so let's just go ahead and set up our hourly temperature component here before we finish up this. So what we want to do for this markup is, what we're going to do first off here is remove this 8 p.m. and we're going to start off with a span tag. Now inside of the span, we're going to open up some curly brackets here, and we want to say new date, and we're going to get the current time from, let's see here, I believe it is let me see, it is the DT value right here. That's what we're going to be using to get the current time. So inside of this date, we want to say this dot time dot DT, and we need to multiply this by 1000, and then we want to come out of here and say to local string, and then we want to pass in the value of en US, and then we want to pass it in a object here, and we want to get the value of hour, and we want it in numeric. Okay, so if we save that and head over here now, you should see we have all the values of all the hours we're returning. So 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So that is all working great. Now the next thing we want to do is we actually want to insert the image for the current condition. Now if you recall, we have done this before. Inside of our public folder, we have conditions here with all these SVGs, and we're going to be doing the same thing that we did, I believe, in the, I don't know where it was, maybe the add city component somewhere, where we actually went ahead and used those values inside of an image tag, and we use some interpolation. So how this is going to work is we're going to have another span here, and inside of the span, we're going to have an image. Okay. Now we want to go ahead and put a colon in front of the src because we're going to be binding. So what we want to do is we're going to say require here. And inside of here, we want to route to our public folder. So we're going to say .. / to get out of the current directories we're in. And we'll say public / conditions. And then here is where we're going to actually do some interpolation. So we want to use the money sign and our brackets. And we're going to say this .time .weather. And we want that first array, so we're going to say 0, and then we're going to say .icon, and then come out of this and say SVG. So now if we head over here, you should see we're going to have all these SVGs that are going to be completely blown out of proportion, but that is all working properly as well. Now, the next thing we need to add is simply the temperature. So what we're going to do is finally another span here, and we're going to say our curly brackets. We'll say math.round, because as you know that this API only returns a decimal for the temperature. We don't want that. So we'll say this .time .temp. And then at the end of this, we want to add our degree sign by saying and degree semicolon. All right, so you're not going to probably see that because, oh, you will. All right, so you see that we had 25 degrees, 25, and if we go down here, you'll probably see a change, which is great. That means everything is working properly. All right then, so with our markup out of the way, let's begin with our styling so that we can actually see all of the data here and we don't have these images blowing out of proportion. So let's head down to our styling tags here, and we're going to start off by doing a few line breaks here, and let's go ahead and target our hour class here. So we want to give this a color of white. We want to say display these as flex. We want the flex direction to be a column. And we want to text all the, or we want to align all the text to the center, so we're going to give it a text align property of center. And then we want a min width on these to be 45 pixels. And then give it a margin right. And what am I doing down there? We want to do a margin right of 30 pixels to separate those. All right. So now for our image here, this is going to be where things will start to look a lot better. We're going to give it a width of auto, a height of 22 pixels, and let's go ahead and display these as blocks. So if I save this, you should see now things look a lot better. So we have all the current conditions here. We have the time, the temperature, and all the different conditions. So you can see everything is working properly with the code we have implemented inside of this component. So that is all great. Okay, so next up, let's go ahead and target our span here. And what we're going to say here is display these as block. And we want to align self to the center. All right, and now we're going to be using some pseudo selectors here to alter some of our span. So what we're going to say here is span, and we want to get the first one. So we're going to say nth child 1. And what we want to do for this one is give it a font weight of 300 and a margin bottom of 12 pixels. So when we say span nth child 1, that's going to refer to our time. All right. And since we're going to be using the same kind of styling, our markup here, or for our CSS, I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and we're going to say the span and the second child. And for this, we simply want to give it a margin bottom of 12. Now, one more time, I'm going to copy this down. We want to get our third span here. So we're going to say span nth child 3. And then we're going to give this one a lot of a bolder font. So we're going to say font weight, and we're going to set this equal to 500. So if we come over to our component now, you'll see we have this set up. So we have got the hourly temp styled up, but now we need to do some styling to our actual hourly weather component here. It's not going to be much, but just enough to bring things all together. So what we want to do is we first want to target the hourly weather. And what we want to say in here is give this a padding on the top and bottom of 30 pixels and set the left and right to 0. And then we're also going to pass a border bottom here to 1 pixel solid, RGBA, and it always fills this in automatically. I don't know why it does that. I need to look into actually getting rid of that. So we'll say 255, 255, 255, not 58, and then we want to pass a 70% opacity here. All right, so now for our container, this is where we're going to make things look a lot better. So we want to display these as flex, so it's going to display each one of these hourly temps in a row. So you'll see when I do this automatically, it'll look a lot better. But right now you can see that all of our hours past 4 a.m. are getting cut off, and I shrink this down, you'll see that even more are going to get taken off the page. Now, to go ahead and fix this, what we're going to do is we're going to give it a max width of 100 view width. Okay, I normally don't use this all the time, but this came in really handy for this project. All right, and then we also want to set the overflow to scroll, and we're going to give it a padding of 0 and then a margin of 0 and 20 pixels. So now if we head over to our application, you can see we can scroll and we can see all the additional hours for our city. So that's all looking great. Now, one thing I don't like is the scroll bar right here when we're scrolling. So what we can do is inside of our container, we can actually say, let's go ahead and nest this in here. I'm going to copy it in. We can say and dash WebKit scroll bar and set that display to none. And if we head over here now, you can see that we no longer have that scroll bar, and it makes for a way better user experience. So that's going to be our hourly component here. So now if we head into each one of our different cities, you can see that we're going to have all the hourly information for each one of our cities.